Little black book, you know what time it is. 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 Hey guys, and welcome to Littleblackbook91. We are back in 2025 having those real conversations. I know you recognize the person beside me. I know she's a familiar face, not only on this channel, but on your national televisions as well. Yes, Winter is joining me today for one of those exciting yet revelational conversations. I saw her on Threads, as we do, as you're searching and scouring the internet, and she went viral for a famous thread talking about relationships and marriage. I'm going to show that thread to you in a few minutes, but first and foremost, let me welcome my wonderful, esteemed, fabulous guest, Winter. How you doing today?
Hi, Kojo. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm good. I'm doing well. Excited about the conversation. And this is the first time for us in 2025. I don't even
It
know that we
is.
did in 2024. I can't remember.
I don't know if we did. It might have been 2023.
Yeah,
So
so it's been
yeah,
a minute. So yeah,
it's been
I'm
a while.
excited to be back to the little black book. So I'm ready. Let's
That's it.
go.
That's it. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Listen, Winter, you obviously took the internet by storm this year with this thread, right? Which I'm going to show the audience in a second or two. But before I do, I just want to know, like, what's been going on with you before we get deep into any conversation. What's been going on with you? Because I haven't seen this channel for at least a year and a bit. Okay, all right. And so, what's been going on with you? What's been happening? How have you been? What's new with you?
Yes. So, I mean, since the last time I was on Little Black Book, I was on Love and Marriage DC. That's usually where people
Yes.
know me from within the YouTube streets. However, back in April of 2024, I quit. I quit Love and Marriage DC, left, did a pretty explosive interview with another channel and just detailing my experience. And Kojo, I can say this with you because I know we are very similar in our belief system. So a lot of people would not ultimately understand, but after praying about it, God was like, it's time to go. And sometimes when we don't listen, some things will start to occur. And I think I started to be on the fence, and I believe God started to allow certain things. And it was just time to go. Obviously, time to go. So since then, I've been working on building my business outside. I am a government contractor, and I do consulting for the U.S. government. In addition to that, I'm also still doing my executive coaching and strategy sessions. So that is something that I now offer to my audience, and building Winter Womanland Media. So I want to focus on women positive media. That's really a passion of mine. Still engaging in acting and media and entertainment, but pursuing other projects. I'm still under contract technically until April of this year. Once that expires, I'll be able to entertain other reality TV opportunities. So that's what's been up.
Okay, I love it. I love it. So following that, obviously, like I said, I interacted with you on Threads, right? This is
Yes.
what actually inspired the conversation. Um, Obviously, just before we get into that conversation, how have you found Threads? Because obviously, Threads is like this kind of branch off, shoot off kind of
Yes.
thing. It's almost like a before Twitter became Twitter. This is what Twitter used to be. So now
Yes.
we've got Threads. So how have you found navigating Threads and having conversations on there?
So it's funny because I found one of my earlier posts and I was like, I ain't going to be before you long because I just really didn't feel like it was all that fun and engaging. And then once I kind of got the hang of Twitter and applied some of my Twitter engagement to Threads, I fell in love with Threads. So Threads right now is obviously not as huge as Twitter. So for me, it's almost like this secret community that we have over there. And you're literally able to engage with people from all walks of life. I find it easier to kind of target my audience and my people on Threads because, again, people are really about engagement. And so I consider Threads my virtual thought diary. Literally, whatever I'm thinking, I will post on Threads. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be relationships, it could be faith, it could be work, entertainment. It doesn't matter. I post whatever I'm thinking is what I post. And I found a lot of success. Thanks to that particular thread that we're going to discuss tonight, I honestly have been, I think my reach is like 2.3 million on Threads right now. So I'm reaching a lot of people on Threads, which is quite interesting. But I love it. It's a great social media location. I don't know. IG might be up to something. Like Meta has definitely challenged the game and changed it a bit with the introduction of Threads. And I think people are starting to catch on. So we'll see what happens, but I like it for now.
Yeah, listen, I have to admit, I've also enjoyed Threads. I think it's gone back to old school where Twitter began, which was
Yes,
just tweeting out your thoughts. I
absolutely.
mean, of course, depending on your algorithm, you might see a lot of different things. I see a lot of men and women, going back and forth as well about relationships. So,
For sure.
I think it's gone back to that basic human interaction where you're just having conversations, or someone's put out a thought and you can comment on that thought, right or wrongly. You can share opinions, and I think
Sure.
that's what's so powerful about it. It's quite simple, and I like that as well.
I just saw someone say, I would love to see you on Ready to Love. Never. I'm not searching for love either. I'm in a committed relationship almost 2 years in.
Amen.
So I am done, y'all. I am out the dating game, but I would, even if I wasn't, I would never do Ready to Love ever.
Why not?
Because I'm an avid Married at First Sight watcher, and I feel like as the seasons progress, people just go on there for clout. Like, it's very
Okay.
rare that you find people sincerely looking for love. And me being the hopeless romantic that I am, I would be the fool that would get paired with somebody that just won't clout. And I just don't have time for it. I just would be irritated. And I just, so no, it's definitely not for me. I admire anyone that has the balls to get on something like that to find love. But I think I've had enough putting my love life on reality TV. I'm good on it.
Listen, I actually hear you. I mean, to put your life on reality TV, it's not easy. It's not simple. You're putting yourself out there to be judged, but especially if you're putting your life in the hands of experts, you're probably setting yourself up for a fail. You know what I
It's
mean?
always because I've come from reality TV. At the end of the day, it's still reality TV. So you're
Mm,
signing up for some level of chaos and drama. That's the part
yeah.
you're never going to rid yourself of. And I think that's the part I can honestly do without. So I'm good. But yeah, I think Ready to Love is getting ready to gear up for a new season. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, can't wait. It's a content dream. Can't wait to do some content on it. So, boy, money maker, money shaker. All right.
Really?
Well, yeah, listen, it makes money. I can't lie to you, baby. As a content creator, for
Hmm.
me, and specifically, it makes a lot of money. So I
Okay.
look forward to it always. You know what I'm saying? More chaos, more money. Okay.
Understood.
Um, yeah, I mean, but we're trying to straighten it out for them. So hopefully they can hear a few points and it'll be straightened out. Okay, let's get to the heart of this conversation,
Okay.
because you put out something on Threads, which I'm going to show the audience as well, so that they can also see what we're looking at. Right? You put this lovely thread on our screens and our apps. Yeah, what was it about a week ago almost? Yeah, about a week and a bit ago.
Yes.
And you've said on this particular thread that for those that are married, someone you eventually realized you should never marry. Oh, sorry. For those that have married someone, my English is. Do you know what? My English is failing me today. I've been failing me all day. All day. I can't read or can't write. Okay, let me say it again. So here it goes one more time. For those that have married someone you eventually realized you should have never married, what was the moment that it hit you? I knew on our honeymoon, I literally called my mom and told her I made a mistake. We didn't last a year. It was the one time I regretted not listening to my gut. First and foremost, before we get deep into this conversation about your actual thread and go deeper into the conversation, what actually inspired you to even type that thread? What was going on that you decided to type about that thread?
So I am a conversationalist, but
Mm,
those conversations often start from lived experience. So I like to share lived experience, whether it's wisdom, situations, circumstances I've been through, and then share, what I've gone through in hopes to like really help and generate conversation. So I was thinking about that after actually watching an episode of Married at First Sight. And I was like, these people don't know anything about who they're marrying, but that was not the case. That's not the case for most of us. Most of us are going to know who we're marrying before we get married. All that to say, I think over time they start to learn, each other and realize, okay, this is not a good fit. Much different from someone you feel like you've gotten to know, and then it starts to hit you over time, like, okay, something's off here, or this might not be, a good fit, or this is incompatible here. So I will say for me, literally from the engagement on, I started to be very antsy. And the thing that made me the most antsy was not something that a lot of people would consider a deal breaker. I share the story only because it's funny, and I want us to laugh a little bit because this is like a topic that can get very deep and serious. All that to say, we had an engagement party. So he proposed. We had an engagement party with just our family. Mind you guys, this is during COVID, so you can't have a huge party. That's not an option. So we had an intimate engagement dinner with his family, my family. This man was the man that you guys were introduced to on Love and Marriage DC season 1. He was 19 years older than me. Now, let's be clear. I'm not a young woman. So dating someone that's older than me is not taboo. A lot of people do it. All that to say, I felt like even though he was older than I was, at the time, he did not look his age. Secondly, he was very much into church. I was heavily steeped in the church. I was a full-blown minister at the time. So my faith and being involved in ministry was very important to me. He was very on board, also involved in ministry. We talked, kingdom business. That was the focus of our connection. So a lot of people say, how in the world did y'all even? That was the connection for us. Then you couple in the prophetic words. Oh my gosh, y'all are going to be a kingdom couple. God is going to bless y'all, yada, yada. That starts to kind of overshadow, I think, our ability to really get to know each other on what I say a common sense level. Like, can I really do life with this person? When we strip down the church, the praying, the reading the scripture, the, praying together, do I actually like this person? And because he was in church, he was a proponent of moving swiftly. He didn't feel like it took a lot of time. Now, am I for or against that now? No. But then, sure, I get it. We're waiting, for marriage to have sex, whatever. 6 months is sufficient. We knew each other prior, but 6 months is what our courtship looked like. All that to say, at our engagement dinner, he insisted on doing a Louis Armstrong impression. And Louis Armstrong is a famous trumpet player, African-American trumpet player. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not the time for that. Like, why do you need to do a Louis Armstrong impression? I just didn't think it was necessary. So I said to him, no, not right now. Maybe another time is more appropriate, but I don't really want to do that. He gets very upset and literally starts to have a meltdown. That's the best way I can explain it. And he says, you never let me do my Louis Armstrong impression. I just want to do it to show everybody my impression. His mom, who is like almost 78, 80 at the time, she's sitting next to him. She puts her hand on his shoulder and she says, okay, relax, relax. She didn't say you couldn't do it. She just said, not right now. And it's okay. Calm down. Almost as if he was like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. It was the weirdest thing. I was so upset. My sister, kid you not, my sister's a therapist. So, Candace is being the therapist that she would be. She literally is sitting next to me. So she knees me with her knee and she says, Winter, fix your face. Just let him do it. Relax. And I said, I don't want to see a Louis Armstrong impression right now. She said, Winter, just let him do it. So my sister says, you can go ahead and do it. It's fine. He sits up in his chair and he, straightens his face up and he does this ridiculous Louis Armstrong impression. I was so embarrassed. And I said to myself, I can't. Like, what was that? That's the first time I'd ever seen him have like a meltdown like that. Because I'm like, you are 58 years old, acting like, or 57 at the time, acting like a 5-year-old. The next day we had a premarital counseling session. I went into that session and I told our therapist, I said, I believe that we should postpone the wedding. He has a meltdown in this session. I don't understand. You just don't want to move forward. And I'm like, no, I don't like what I saw yesterday. That really bothered me. And it's something that's not sitting well with me. And I don't know where that's coming from. No, I was just wanting things to go well. So anyway, our therapist at the time said to us, like, Winter, that's not a real deal breaker. It's not something that I don't feel like you guys can work through. He said that, he just was nervous and he wanted to impress your family, which is understandable. This is your engagement party. I think you guys can move forward and you can work through this. I reluctantly agreed. When I tell you everything that could have went wrong leading up to our wedding day, I mean, videographer almost canceling. We had to hire a new photographer. Decorations were getting blown all over the place because it was about to be a thunderstorm. I feel like God was trying to alert me, like, Winter, what you're feeling is absolutely valid. Follow it. Go with it. And after we got married, one of my friends who was assisting that day, it was a very tiny wedding. She pulled me to the side and she said, Winter, I need to tell you something. Now, this is after we've already said I do. She said, he was very groomzilla-ish. That's the best way I can explain it. And he said something very condescending to me. And she said, I didn't want to say anything, but another friend of mine who was there encouraged her to tell me. And what he said to her was it was just disrespectful. So I literally said, I looked at him. I said, I need to speak to you right now. So we went into the room and I said, my friend just shared with me something you said to her. I said, that's disrespectful. I said, why would you say that? She's helping us out of the kindness of her heart. And I would never speak to your family and friends that way. No, it wasn't like that. I was just, it was a lot happening and there was a lot of moving parts and I was just trying to make things right. Always an excuse. So he goes back outside and he glares at my friend and said, who told her what I said? Which one of you told her? They were like, I said, it doesn't matter who told me. You just need to apologize and make it right. When I tell you, all I needed to know, because it never stopped, clear up until the honeymoon, I called my mom. I said, this is not going to work. I said, I think I made a mistake here. Because that same behavior continued the entire time we were on our honeymoon. The meltdowns, he had finagled my celebrity at the time. I was an influencer. Much like you, Kojo, you can get influencer deals. He had bragged about this expensive 5-star honeymoon to St. Lucia. We were staying in bungalows, which is a very expensive thing to do when you're staying at that type of resort. I learned at the end, he had this beachside. It was always, grandiose gestures that he would do for me, but he had this beachside dinner. So, the dinner in the heart you see on the beach. So we had one of those. Before then, he was like, I need you to come here with me for a second. We need to get some footage. And I said, some footage? What do you mean some footage? Like, I want to go have dinner. I don't want to be an influencer on my honeymoon. No, I just need you to do it right quick. So I overhear him talking to the managers of the hotel. And he said, just give me a second. I just need to work with her and get her set up. We'll make sure you get all your footage that you need so you can publicize these beautiful bungalows. And I said, publicize the beautiful bungalows? Yeah, I just, I worked out an agreement with them. Like, that's how we got the upgrade. Y'all, when I tell you the regret of all regrets, because that same foolishness continued throughout the entire year that we stayed married. And let me tell you, if I could have annulled it within the first 30 days, I would have. Unfortunately, the state in which I live, their annulment requirements are very stringent. But let me tell you, he was who I thought he was. And I really wish that it never happened. So this is how I posted the question, because I wanted to know if I was alone, because I felt like myself, so many people know there's something that occurs before you say I do that indicates you should not move forward. There's something, even if it's tiny. I tell people all the time, do not discount tiny stuff. It's those little foxes that come back and bite us eventually. So pay attention. Even if it seems insignificant, Even if it seems like it wouldn't be a big deal to some other people, if it disturbs your inner being and your inner knowing, pay attention to that. That's usually the Holy Spirit or our inner voice, whatever you want to call it. I say Holy Spirit alerting us that something is off. And I'm telling you, El Cid, I see your comment. I would rather lose money than to have lost a year on my record being married. That's a ding I got to take. I would rather have lost money, honestly. And I get it. I think you're spot on with why a lot of people go forward, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I think it's making me think about. Obviously, I've never gone to be married, but I've obviously been in relationships where we've considered it, and I remember one distinct one as well where we were discussing it, and I just remember that I wasn't really. I remember the Lord was telling me you need to get out, but I just kept on pushing forward and forward and just kind of trying to drive it forward. And there were so many things that were missing about that relationship. And it wasn't necessarily that they were bad or anything. We just weren't compatible. When you start a relationship, you may be compatible at that point, but when the Lord is transferring you and growing you, life is transforming you, and you're going through experiences, you're maturing in certain areas, and you're starting to come into your own. Then you start to realize that this relationship isn't for you. But sometimes you feel like you've invested so much in it that you stay in it. And that's what actually happened to me. I just was like so invested in that relationship, like, oh, I've done 2 years. Also, I'm a person that says, if I make my bed, I should lie in it. And that's how I felt at the time. I was like, well, I've made my bed, and let's be honest, I'm gonna be honest with you. We were fornicating. So I'm like, listen, I've deflowered her blood. So, to be honest, we should really go forward. Like, let me not waste the fact that she's, what I'm saying? That was how my brain was really thinking at that point in time. And it was like, even though I knew deep down, there was something deep down that was telling me, don't go forward to the marriage part. But I kept on and to be honest, when she asked me, what are we doing? I didn't want to look like the man that's not intentional. So I decided to, all right, listen, you know what? Yeah, cool. Let's move this forward. Let's get to the engagement or the proposal. We call it the knocking. Let's start the knocking, which is like the start of that process where your parents come and see each other's parents. You bring a few gifts and everything like that, blah, blah. We did that part. You know what I'm saying to you? And even all the while through that, in my head, I'm like, something's not right. I know that this is not right because I know that it's not coming together the way I feel it should be. I remember I had a conversation with her dad, and I asked him a question. I said, like, so for you, when you got married, did you feel, I don't want to say specific because there was specifics or whatever in that situation, but I was like, did you feel some certain things between yourself and your wife before you got married? And he said, yeah, no, we had some certain feelings. And I said, okay, well then maybe it's just me. But I just couldn't shake it. Now, this is where I think that where us as Christians, I think specifically, but I think even for those who are not Christians, their intuition, their gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, for them, that you feel something that tells you at that point in time, don't go forward. And it's not about being perfect. It's about the fact that there's something just tells you that this is not the right thing to choose, and that it's going to be a big problem if you go forward with this particular action, in a sense,
Absolutely. And I think, again, I tell people all the time, because this was a great question that was posed to me. Like, how do you differentiate between something that isn't right versus maybe it's your fear or anxiety that's creeping up? And I said, honestly, they can definitely seem like they are the same, which is why I think a lot of people overlook it and feel like they can work through it. But I said, a knowing oftentimes is there when things appear to be good. And I said, I think with fear and anxiety, it's usually ever present. Doesn't matter if things are good or bad. You kind of you try to work your way through it as a person. That's journey. We all have our journeys. But that knowing, I'm telling you, there's not a person at that time that would have told me that I was, I don't believe I would have had support. I'm just going to be honest. I think if I had announced that I was calling off our engagement, a lot of people would have pushed against it. Winter, are you sure? Did you pray about it? I don't know. I probably would have got a lot of words saying, Winter, you need to go back to him. But when I tell you, I knew deep down something in me, I really wished I had a press through come hook or crook, because that feeling, even when people felt like I was being treated like a queen, and I believed I was being treated like a queen, I could not shake feeling like something is off here. Like, I don't know what it is exactly, but something is just, it's just quite not right. And so I think that's kind of the difference between your process of working through maybe challenges you've had with relationships before, and that knowing that's letting you know, yeah, you probably need to go in a different direction here. And you can suppress it all you want, but it usually comes back up eventually, which is why so many people end up divorced.
Yeah, and I think you're touching on something, right? So you are explaining the consistency of the nagging. It's almost like
Yeah.
having a partner who's nagging you all the time, and it's getting irritating. And so to a point where you have to squash the noise. You have to almost push it
Mhm.
down. But the
Yes.
difference between the fear and the actual, when you feel like, call it the Holy Spirit, the gut instinct, is that there's this consistent nagging that happens even when you're happy, as you were saying. Like
Uh-huh.
it's almost like taking a photo and you're smiling, but you can hear the noise in your head going, this is still not right, something's still not
Yes.
correct. Even though I'm smiling, I'm doing everything in terms of the function, in terms of doing the procedure and following it forward, following through with all the actions that seemingly look like I'm
Yes.
invested in the situation, but something behind keeps whizzing and making a sound and a noise. It's like a buzz in your ear that you keep hearing, almost like when you've been to the club, you come back home and you hear that you're ringing in your ear. It's a consistency that happens to you. So that's the difference between the fear and the fear and
Yeah.
that feeling of when it's a wrong thing, because it keeps coming up even when it seems like you're in a safe place and you're comfortable, there's no threat, and suddenly you just have a pang, it just hits you, and it's like, then the thought hits you, and it's like, should I be following through this? Is this where I need to be? Do I need to go through with this? Like, and then what you really start asking yourself is, why am I feeling this way? Whereas a
Yes.
fear is like more of a thing where there's a behavior that happens, usually a stimulus, something happens and it triggers
Yeah.
you into the
Yes.
fear of, oh, I don't know if I can be married or da da da. Where this one is that no one can do anything. You can just be literally sitting there. You could be talking to your partner, and
Yeah.
in your head you're looking at them and you're going, I don't know if you're the right person.
Let me tell you. And Kojo, I think it's so important to talk about this, because I think we really rinse and water this down when it comes to church. Because one of the things that I felt like at the time was very prevalent was a lot of people, myself included, saying, the person that God has for you may not be what you really want. Like, it may not be in this certain box that you wanted in. And so for me, this man was nothing that I wanted. And it's almost as if I had to pacify my desires because I felt like this was of God, right? But let's be clear, God is not forcing us to do a thing. We have free will at all times. He will give us the wisdom, and I believe the guidance and the common sense to choose, but He is never going to force anyone on us. It's our job and responsibility to choose. All that to say, I wasn't attracted to him. I was not. Like, when I tell you, that was the hardest thing. And I'm just like, Lord, is this like some sort of, you know, Ruth the Boaz situation? Like, I'm just going to suck it up because this is what you have for me. But y'all, God is not cruel. He would never force you to be someone that you just are not attracted to. I had a difficult time dealing with his age. That was very challenging for me. And one of the things that are more practical that I'll share that came up later that I didn't pay attention to, he was always trying to, I feel like, um, love bomb me. So I'm telling you, it was so many things that I think, looking back, were overshadowing my ability to um see him for who he was. And I'm telling you, one of the things that stuck out to me is that I noticed he was so, I feel like, in a hurry to get married, that it seemed like the important things that should have taken precedence weren't his focus. I.e., as soon as we got married, I got a call from the landlord who said that our rent was late. I'm like, what do you mean our rent is late? He was like, yeah, like I never got the check from your husband. Now, this man had already told me he had paid our rent. So I asked him, I said, hey, I just got a call from our landlord. He said that you didn't pay our rent. Oh, no, I'm working on that right now. Like I was getting ready to transfer it. I'm just working on some things. He spent a greater part of our honeymoon night on the phone making calls. My issue was you spent all of this money on this grandiose luxury honeymoon and you didn't think to pay our rent first. So we were going to come back from a luxurious vacation to a sign on the door that we didn't have a place to stay. It's wild to me. Like the things I think back, like paying attention to those things in the beginning, how he, so all that to say. I'm seeing some of the comments. I want to get into them because I know I'm not the only person that is this. And I agree. Somebody said attraction is not just looks. I agree. It's more than that. But it was a lot that I wasn't attracted to.
Well, we can discuss it because the ladies have been on my neck about this. And I've said to you, people, listen, do not choose me if you don't find me attractive. Why are you wasting your time? Don't choose me. There's somebody who thinks I'm so sexy and amazing out there. Please don't choose me and waste their time and waste mine. You made an interesting point, right? You said about obviously about the person you may not, the person you, that you are quote unquote given, it may not be what you actually want. And I think this is actually ties in directly to the reason why people choose the wrong people, right? Because in essence, what you're saying is that a lot of us have been conditioned, whether it's church, whether it's your home, whatever, especially women have also been conditioned in this particular way that, you know what, like he's a good man, Savannah. So like, you know what I mean? Like go forward with it in a sense, right? But I think it links back to the reason why you have that nagging feeling is that with the Holy Spirit, he knows the true essence of the individual, right? The Bible talks about how the Spirit, no man knoweth the man's mind except the spirit of the man. So the spirit of the person understands the mind of the person, the true nature of the person. So what you're when you mentioned that, what my brain went to was the reason why you have that consistent nagging feeling is because it's a betrayal. So to choose that person and to marry them is actually a betrayal of your true essence and self. That's why you're having that nagging feeling, because that same feeling actually happens a lot in relationships with whether it's friends, family, whether it's you, whether it's work. Whenever you feel like you're not being true to you, you have this kind of nagging feeling coming up with you, telling you like you're not being true to you, but then you push it down because you don't want to be the bad person, or you don't want to be the rude person, or you don't want to cause any kind of madness in a sense. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to marrying that wrong person, and that's why you have that first feeling before you get married. You have that anxiety, the pangs of that, those naggings. And I think, as you said, after when you do then get married, you have this sense of I've made a grave mistake. I've betrayed me, and it's like suddenly you're like, okay, I need to wake up and come up from that situation. So I definitely hear that as well.
And once you feel that, you can't unfeel it. I think the misconception is that you can pray it away.
Which part? When you
the knowing that you've chosen poorly, or I wouldn't even say poorly, or chosen the wrong person. Once you feel that and know that, you cannot unknow it. I don't care how many counseling sessions you go to. You can't pray it away. That does not exist. The wrong person is going to be the wrong person. And it's an interesting dynamic, because I will say, someone made a comment and I absolutely agree. It opened my eyes to how much I ignored myself. And I had to, when I went into therapy, because one of the things we immediately had to do was go into therapy. Can you imagine getting married and literally you have to go to therapy because your marriage is in automatic triage? From the time we got back, we had an emergency session, because I was like, I need to annul this joint. Like, whew, you can't unfeel it. So we started doing couples therapy and individual counseling. And as I'm going through individual counseling, I told my therapist, because it's confidentiality, she couldn't tell him what we were talking about. And I felt safe. I said, I need to figure out why I made this decision. I need to figure out why I chose him. Like I feel like this is more of a winter issue than it is him just being the wrong person for me, because I know he's the wrong person, but I got to figure out why I made this decision. And one of the things that came out of that was I was so hell bent on getting back to the position of being a wife, because I got married for the first time at 19. 15 years of my young adult life was spent being a wife and a mom, that oftentimes I wasn't choosing for myself. I would literally choose whoever chose me, because I just wanted to be back in the position of being a wife, because that's where I was most comfortable. So I told my therapist, I said, I will never get married again until I figure that out. I literally have to figure out who I am outside of being somebody's wife. And I will say that's one of the things that being in reality TV gifted me, because it helped me find my voice. And once I found my voice, it's like season 2, I was set up with someone on the show, and we dated for about 90 days. Yeah, 90 days, 100 days. Wasn't very long. I know it seemed longer on the show, but we dated for about 3 months. And a lot of people watching the show were like, he's a good man, Savannah. But Winter had learned her lesson. And I knew, I said, baby, as soon as this season wrap, it's a wrap. He's not for me. He's not for me. And I felt proud of myself, because that was what I needed with the second marriage. I needed that confidence to be able to stand on my feeling and my gut of saying, no, I know this isn't for me. And you may not understand and you may not support it, but I'm going to definitely go on about my business and let the chips fall where they may. But a lot of people don't have that. And I think that's an issue. We got to get to know what and who we are, because it's very difficult to identify who is good for you when you don't really know yourself. So,
you know what? My brain is running at 100 miles per hour, because there's a lot of things I want to say into what you just said. Yeah. First thing I want to say is that you're absolutely right, right? So in doing so, why people end up choosing the wrong person. First of all, I want to say this. It is the grace of God that people get to even go through with the marriage, because some of us would have gone through with it had not situation planned out differently. So I'm starting to really realize that everything is the grace of God. Like, absolutely, you may have been married a few times, but I could have been married a few times. It's only because God decided that, I'm going to intervene here. And that for your story, it can't work that way, coach. You know what I'm saying to you? Because many of us have been in the same position, but then something happens and then we don't go through with it. What I would say is that a lot of times for those of us who don't necessarily know ourselves very well and have not developed a voice, we have not developed our value system in terms of valuing what we want. We kind of surrender our wants and our desires and likes into pleasing other people, which I know is people pleasing, and a codependent spirit sometimes as well.
Yes.
But within that spectrum is also this aspect of sometimes we value people, or we value the marriage above our actual happiness. And so the marriage then becomes the idol in that space that we long for, because it will give us the satisfaction, the validation, and then it will give us a status. And then it will solve an issue, which it can't solve, by the way. It will solve an issue, which is of this, I needed to feel like I was worthy. Yep. And so I've gone through this decision, because if I get married, it shows that I'm desired, I'm wanted, I'm cared for. Somebody wants me enough to want to marry me. Do you know what I'm saying to you? And so those feelings of wanting it, and the time clock running as well, and saying I wanted to have it done by a certain period of time and expecting it to be done at this time, can actually play a role into why sometimes we go forward with these plans, even though we have this nagging feeling in our chest, in our head, in our minds, and we'll go past those feelings because of the fact that we had that intense desire to prove something. So when you were saying that, I was thinking about that. And I guess a final point to just add to that was that, for being in that place where you said, obviously, realizing that you've made that mistake and choosing incorrectly, I was thinking from a man's perspective, because my last relationship I was in, we started talking about marriage very early on. I was very intentional. And then I started seeing behaviors and I said, no, this can't work. But I actually didn't communicate. I said it can't work. And I didn't actually communicate. I was almost trying to wait to see what would happen. and I was kind of observing, but at the same time, I wasn't communicating with another person. It was only until they actually said to me, and this is going back to what you said about finding that voice. I didn't realize that my voice was still stifled. Is that only when she asked me, "Why have you stopped talking about marriage?" And I said, "What?" I didn't even realize I stopped talking about it. So she had to pull it out of me. I didn't realize I lost my voice at that point in time. So when she said, I said, and she said, there's a reason why you stopped talking about it. And that's when I was like, you know, can I be honest with you? I'm starting to see some behaviors that I know wouldn't work for me. So I think this happens to a lot of men too, as to why, for instance, and it doesn't mean that the woman's done anything wrong, but I think for men as well, finding a voice is also very important that we don't talk about, because a lot of times what men will do is kind of like a passive aggressive move, which is they'll stall the relationship. So the car will come to a halt, and then they'll stall. And it's like the car ain't going forward, and you're like, why is the car not going forward? Why are we not? We've been in 4 years, we've been in this, and we ain't going nowhere. And sometimes it's because he's seen something, but sometimes because also he knows something's not quite right, but he's refusing to make the decision that let me just leave this alone. And I think a lot of men do that too as well. So it was just something I just noticed when you said it. I was like, oh,
it's
men,
so
do this.
It happens before you know it. And High Vibe, I want to speak to this because let me tell you, I believe one of the most common things that people responded to in that thread was they knew on the honeymoon. The reality is that a lot of people go through with it because of shame. They don't want to have the stigma of divorce. I'm telling you, I literally would have left that man 30 days, if that in. Like, if I literally could have come back home from that honeymoon and filed for an annulment, I would have. But let me tell you, the compounded interest of having a large following at the time, let's be very clear. While I was not big on reality TV, I had a very large community that I was a leader in. And I'm talking 60, 70, 80, 100,000 views of people seeing my messages, me telling people, gotta send you the one. And I'm the poster child for keeping your legs closed, and a man will still respect you even if you don't have sex with him, and he'll marry you, and it don't have to take long if it's got, like, I'm the poster child for that. So I'm in a real life situation that contradicts the things that I have stood for. I was terrified to have to admit I got this joker real wrong. And that was something that kept me in a situation a lot longer than I feel like I personally would have, because so many things continue to happen to validate why I was feeling that way. But the shame was oppressive. I started to become very depressed. I started to withdraw. There were months I didn't post on social media. If I didn't have a ministry engagement, you really wouldn't see me. But the shame is something that a lot of people feel. And I didn't want to be twice divorced. Nobody says, oh yeah, when I'm older, I want to grow up and be twice divorced. Who wants to do that? I also had a failed engagement in between this time. So it's like, girl, what in the world is really going on? Like, I didn't want that. So I want to create space for that reality that a lot of people wrestle with this. And I didn't have a ton of trauma with this guy. I don't want to say that either. It was just little things that kind of stuck out to me and pricked my spirit that let me know this was not the right situation for me. But it wasn't like this man was manhandling me. Y'all, I got flowers every day. Every day. He would send groceries to my house in a pandemic every week. We had date nights every week. He would send stuff to the house, like the type of romance that most people want from a guy, he was doing. He literally surprised, that's a different story for a different day, but he surprised me with an engagement present of a Tesla. No woman is going to sit there looking at a man doing all that and be like, oh my gosh, you're terrible. No, I can't say that that was my reality. It was the little things that I was like, ooh, something's not quite right in that. And those are the things that I'm challenging people to pay attention to. Those little foxes mean a lot more than we give credit for. So you said he covered up something. Well, I realized that now. I had never been love bombed until this situation. So I wasn't too keen on love bombing. I didn't know what that was, but boy, did I get an education. And you're absolutely right. He was absolutely using that to cover up something, for sure.
No, you're not lying about that. 100%. The love bombing is real as well. Now, you said something really powerful, right? You spoke about, the shame of admitting that you're wrong. And I think this also links, again, we're going back to, because we haven't even got into our main conversation, which is obviously about people making a mistake. And that, again, is also a big hindrance for people, because that shame that you're talking about, that emotion of shame, that guilt, that embarrassment of having to go backwards, because it's seemingly a forward movement when you're getting engaged, or someone's saying they want to marry you. It's a forward movement. And especially if you are on social media, if you are on TV, or you have an elevated position per se, right, with a group of people, and you have mentioned, maybe you've even spoken about how great your relationship, maybe you said about how amazing that person is, and how wonderful they are, and then to have to go back to those people and tell them, well, amazing as they are, I gotta run it back. I can't go forward anymore. That is a massive, massive thing for people in terms of shame as well. And I think maybe you can talk about this as well. The difficulty in terms of maybe for people who have already conjoined their families, and then having to break that news to them. And then, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't had that particular perspective. So I don't know if you can talk to that perspective in terms of that difficulty and what some of the emotions and the feelings that are around that space, when you know that maybe this person isn't right for you. And then you got families that have already kind of conjoined, kind of know each other already. They're celebrating you guys. They're rooting for you. And then you have to kind of like be like, this ain't it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole different added level of pressure and stress. I'm going to be honest. That was challenging for me. But what's interesting is that my family is very perceptive. So fortunately for me, as things started to kind of unfold and happen, they started to see the same things I did. I did not even know that, he was contacting my mom behind my back and essentially like tattletelling on me and encouraging my mom to reach out to me and have a woman-to-woman talk about how I should respect him more. He wanted to be co-owner in my business / ministry at the time, and I wouldn't add him. And he was very upset with that. So he contacted my mother behind my back and told her that he just wanted to protect me and he wanted to cover me. And I wasn't allowing him to be my covering. So he needed her to come talk to me. Now, my mom is old school. She does not believe in getting involved in married people's business. So she was very uncomfortable. She never shared with me because he asked her not to. So in efforts not to be in the middle, she never said anything. But this continued to happen so much. My sister, who's the therapist, my mom reached out to her and showed her some of the messages he was sending her and asked my sister to write him a message to stop contacting her about our marriage. So all that to say, when I started to vocalize that I was over it and I was going to move forward with moving outside, like moving on from the marriage and filing a divorce, my mom said, Winter, I need to tell you something. She said, I did not want to intervene and get involved because you know how I am with that. And she said, you said you guys were in therapy and counseling. She's like, but Winter, she said, he's been contacting me nonstop since you guys got married, trying to tell me to talk to you and saying that you were being disrespectful. But she said it wasn't lining up with things that I knew and things that I had observed. She said, I'm going to be honest, it started to scare me because he would always ask me not to tell you. And that bothered me as your mother. And she said, so whatever you feel like is necessary to do, we're behind you. And so everyone doesn't have a supportive family like I had. I would just say, if you got to create your own community to have the support that you need to move out of a situation that you know is not right for you, do that. Because your family may not understand, especially if they are intertwined the way that our families were, my friends were. And unfortunately, he was, you've heard of this term, Kojo, triangulating. He was trying to triangulate my family and friends against me. Thankfully, my friends know my character. My family knows my character. So he could not successfully do that. All that to say, once he realized that he could not triangulate and turn my friends and family against me, he started with his family. And I'm of the belief, when you divorce or break up, his family is his family, your family is your family. I'm not trying to turn your family against you. I don't need to talk to your friends. You go your way, I will go mine. His motive was very different. So I will say it's typically very tough. But my best advice is just to be honest. They're going to learn and find out eventually. Ripping the Band-Aid off later is not going to feel any different than ripping it off sooner. So you might as well just be straight up and honest and let people know. I do feel like the more honest you are, it gives people the opportunity to not only process, but figure out how they can support you through the process of divorce. So, I went through so much during that situation, but I did learn a lot about myself. And I did learn a lot about how much pressure we put on ourselves to please other people when we already see that the ship is sinking. And at some point, it's like they tell us in the airport, or the airplane, you got to put your own mask on first. Essentially, you got to save yourself first before you can help anybody else. And for me, I had my children to think about. There was a situation that had occurred between he and my son. Up until this time, he had never shown any sort of anything towards my kids. Like, he was very good to them. I'm very big on that. I don't just introduce dudes to my kids. I don't play about that. Like, I got to make sure you're good and fill you out before you meet my kids. He was always very kind, very generous, very respectful. And they were also in return. That said, there was a situation that occurred about a month before I put him out. And I do mean I put him out. His son was younger. He had a younger son. And his son had wrote on some checks. But he came to me and said, your kids are writing on my checks. Now, mind you, his son is, I think, about 9 or 10. My kids at the time are teenagers, and I have an almost adult child. My kids are not writing on checks. It's just not the age that they would do that. And I said to him, I said, I'm sorry, but the kids just know better. They don't write on checks. They would know better than to scribble and write on checks. No, I know your kids did it, and you need to get on to them. They need to leave my checks alone. I said, listen, I said, I hear you, and I would certainly speak to them if it was them, but I'm telling you, this is not something they would do. So I said, just hold for a second. I go question the kids. I said, hey, did you guys happen to see any checks? Did you write on them? They said, no, Mom, we don't even know what you're talking about. We haven't seen any checks. So I go back to him. I said, my kids said they did not write on the checks. I said, however, did you check with your son? I asked him, he said he didn't do it. I said, okay, your son is the youngest kid in this house. I know if I was his age and my parent came up and asked me if I wrote on some checks I know I probably had no business writing on, and it sounded like they were upset, I probably wouldn't tell you the truth. You just want me to beat my son. And he starts to yell and get in my face. Round about this time, my oldest son comes walking past the laundry room where we were talking. My son looks me in my face. He says, Mom, if he doesn't get out of your face, I'm going to lay him out and I'm going to ask questions later. So he said, no, that's not what I mean. He said, I just saw what you did. My son, I've never seen my son so angry and upset. And he said, no, I just, was trying to have a conversation with your mom. I looked at him. I said, listen, it's some things, even as a mom, I cannot fix. Once kids lose respect for you, it is very difficult to get back. I'll go talk to him. And so I don't know. I guess he went and tried to talk to him and apologize, but I could see in my son's face he was done. He came back to me. He's like, no, I smoothed it over. We're good. He went upstairs. I said, I need some space because this is a lot. My house is a peaceful house. I'm not used to this type of contention. And so I went to my son. I said, are you okay? He said, I want to go to Dad's house. He said, I will not stay in this house as long as he is here. He said, Mom, he said, I hope you are okay. He's like, I'm telling you now. He said, I'll go to jail. I don't ever want to see him get in your face like that again. Has he ever done that before? I said, no. I said, that's the first time that's ever happened, son. He said, I got to go to Dad's house. He's like, I don't want to be here. I knew at that point, for the sake of my kids, because that is not my kids' character. They're very respectful of adults. It was a wrap. He was literally put out my house within a month. All that to say, there's so many things that I feel like people cover up. And I want to say this because a lot of people don't realize time is no indication of when you should or should not marry somebody. But I will say, for the love of God, slow yourself down. Slow yourself down. Give yourself time to pay attention. Give yourself time to vet. Give yourself time to spend with their family, because a lot of times with these hidden behaviors, their families know. Their families see. I go back to our engagement party when his mom patted him down like the little boy. She knew. She knew exactly the type of ticking time bomb that he was. She knew he had a tendency to fly off the handle. They learned to pacify it. But because I didn't allow time to have its perfect place, and this is where I believe the Bible teaches us that patience, right? Patience is a perfecting work. It's a necessary work. Patience takes what? Time. And a lot of us don't want to wait for, especially in church, because we're trying to keep our legs closed and not fornicate and live according to the way that we're taught biblically. But time works for you and not against you. And I tell people all the time, I would rather you go to therapy every day and work on your self-control. I would rather maybe you got to court long distance for a bit till you get yourself under control, because those are natural feelings that you have to learn to manage. It's not going to go anywhere. Marriage is not a cure for lust. So if you have a lust issue, getting married ain't going to fix that. So it's better that you work on it before you get married. Self-control is a journey. Tell people to slow down. My guy and I have been dating for almost 2 years now. People ask us all the time, especially over the last year, when do y'all get married? When we decide to get married, we want to make sure we leave no stone unturned. Coincidentally, I've been married twice before, so has he. We both have very similar stories. Our second marriages were very short. And that's very, honestly, the reality with a lot of marriages, especially people that have been married 3 times before. You'll find that the second one was usually the shortest and the first one was the longest. Because the first marriage usually is because of some sort of incident that's like cheating or, something that's usually most people divorce over. The second one is usually because we didn't sit still long enough and heal long enough, and we didn't take our time, and we didn't learn from our first mistakes. So we choose people that we would have never chose in our healed state. So all that to say, slow your roll, pay attention. It is so necessary. But we can dig deeper into some of these replies, because let me tell you, the replies were replying about when they knew.
I will bring them up actually so they can see it as well, so you can go through them and just let me know which one you want to talk about, because obviously I'll just scroll down and you can go through them. I don't know if you remember some of them that were on there. Obviously my algorithm might be slightly different to yours, but it's quite a few on here that was some people's one. Someone said I was 38 weeks pregnant, 13 years into marriage, and he told me he didn't want any of this and waved his hand in my direction. When he sobered up, he said he didn't mean it. I wish I left then. My God. Ooh. Let me know if anyone sticks out to you, want me to read, or you want to read out. That's fine by me.
I would say scroll back up, because a lady said she knew going into the wedding, but they had deposits right there.
Okay. I knew 6 months into planning the wedding, but we had put deposits and had ordered my dress, and everyone was so dang happy. I felt so stuck, went through the motions and the wedding, and 60 months later, I left. There was no way I was going to do a lifetime. Met my second husband, and we've had our ups and downs, but we just celebrated year 14 of marriage, 19 years together. Whoosh.
Wow. Everyone being so dang happy. Look at that. People pleasing. People pleasing. Somebody said I had a really bad feeling about it while getting dressed for the wedding. I knew it was a bad idea. I'm going to tell both of my daughters that I'll hold on to their marriage license until after the wedding, until they tell me to file it or get rid of it.
I guess that's a lesson that she's learned. Someone said, I knew standing in front of the judge. I literally cried that night while consummating our marriage. I stayed for 17 years and regret every moment of it. I've heard of this, people end up on the night of their marriage or whatever, they end up crying and staying or either quitting the marriage.
Oh my gosh, I have a very real, oh my goodness, very real situation that's much like this. One of my good friends growing up, her mom had gotten married for the first time. She had been divorced like, I don't even know, 14, 15 years. It was a long time. And she got engaged again. But this guy, you could tell she just didn't like him. He was crazy about her, but she did not feel the same way. And I just think she was getting older and she really settled. All that to say, she called my mom because she was so, I just don't think she was settled about marrying him that she literally wet herself the night that they got married. And I'm like, ma'am, that was an indication that you should have ran for the hills. I couldn't imagine crying, or I was another one. I had to get drunk, and I'm not proud of that, but it's a real situation for me.
What do you mean you have to get drunk? What you talking about? What do you mean you have to get drunk? What are you talking about, Winter?
I'm so serious. I did not want to consummate the marriage. He was an old guy. He was an older guy, and it's not something I'd ever saw for myself. He wasn't overweight or anything like that. It's just that he was old. So I had to toss quite a few back before that was going to happen.
Oh damn! Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's tight. As I was saying, that's peak. You had to.
That's my truth. We had a whole argument over it because he started to notice, and I'm just like,
oh, was it happen to be a regular thing where you have to keep on drinking to even get to that place?
Yeah.
Damn.
Because he didn't do it for me. Like, I hate to, we're grown here, right? Like,
yeah, we're grown. You can talk real.
You know that there's a certain thing that your inside's got to be tingled a bit before you feel like you want to move forward with something like
Mount Rushmore. Mm-hmm.
It's exactly. And I was not attracted to him. So the natural feelings that I would have felt to be in the mood for something like that, it wasn't going to be towards him. It wasn't going to just happen naturally. So I had to have a few drinks to even get my mind right. What they're turning into.
No, but this is a real conversation, right? Because obviously, from a Christian perspective, this might be more difficult for some people to have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's a question to ask. And maybe it's more for the women than for the men, because I think men are just wild in general. So to be honest, you know what I mean? The wind blows and we're good to go. But for the ladies specifically, is the sexual, how do I call it? A sexual chemistry, because it's not sex. Because we're talking about the feeling, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to talk about actual sex, because obviously Christians, we're not supposed to be doing that. But just to say, like, the sexual chemistry, having, like you said, that urge, having that feeling, you know what I'm saying? You're moved in that particular way. If you don't have that, is that a cause for concern?
I'm going to be honest, for a lot of women, no, because I feel like women are honestly conditioned and groomed to be desensitized to sex. And we are conditioned to believe that sex is for procreation, especially in the church. I know a lot of women, especially that are born and raised in church, are sexually suppressed. And so a lot of them go into marriage not being sexually stimulated because they've been taught to suppress it for so long. So for us, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. I think it's one of those things. I know for me, it took a lot of deconditioning. It took a lot of growth and healing and therapy to learn to own my own sexuality as a woman and embrace the fact that it was, in fact, good, healthy, normal. I should feel connected and attracted to my significant other. I should want to be sexual with that person. Those are normal feelings. But unfortunately, in church, we are taught to suppress that. And I tell people this all the time. You're crazy if you think a lot of that automatically turns on when you get married and say I do. You know how many men I literally would refer to counseling in church because they were in a sexless marriage or their wife wasn't sexually flexible or free. They felt like they were almost still having to chase down their wives to get some. And we're talking about a marriage bed that's undefiled and you ain't got no restrictions and perimeters. I'm telling you now. And so aside from that, Cass, great point. The lack of emotional chemistry usually is what really pulls a woman in. So if maybe you don't physically necessarily get me in the mood, if you're pouring into me mentally and emotionally, I might my leg might start to twitch a little bit because I know a lot of women feel that as long as their emotional cup is filled, that can fuel their physical cup. But I think a lot of women are waking up to the fact that we are in fact sexual beings as well. And you should want to be attracted to your spouse. You shouldn't have to get drunk to be with them. You shouldn't have to, cry or dread being with someone intimately because it's just not what you want. That's crazy. But a lot of women, let me tell you, the amount of women that is faking them orgasms in them marriages is real. And I'm telling you now, you want me to be real transparent?
Be transparent.
I'm going to be real transparent with it. I was married for 15 years to my children's father. 15. I would say, oh goodness, about 6 or 7 years into our marriage, I was the worst kind of prude ever. I wouldn't do nothing. He would ask me to, I wouldn't do nothing. If it wasn't missionary, baby, you wasn't getting nothing else.
The only missions we know about is the ones we're taking for Jesus. Why are we not?
I'm telling you. When I think back to how ridiculous I was sometimes, and don't even get me started if I was in a mood or I was upset with him, I would lock it down. I remember I didn't have sex with him for 2 months straight. Because I was mad. I was in a mood. It's crazy. It's crazy work. And I'm looking like, so fast forward, when I had found out that this man had cheated on me, I mean, it hurt me so bad. But when I actually grew up and went through my process of healing and therapy, one of the things I had to own, it don't make us cheating, right? And I'm not making an excuse for it, but we got married at 19 years old. This is when a man is in his sexual prime. Can you imagine being married, only having one wife you're supposed to get your intimacy from, and she's closed-legged most of the time? I don't feel like it. I'm not in the mood. I'm not interested. I don't want to try that. I don't want to. Oh, for years, Kojo. So I'm going to be honest. While I don't condone his cheating, there's a part of me that from an objective point of view and understanding and knowing the intimate details of our circumstances, I do understand. I do understand it.
Transparent. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Can't lie to you. I think that's important to also, I mean, it's not a discussion topic. I mean, we can do it another time, actually. That's a really good discussion. I think that would be amazing to talk about. But I think that's really important, though, to discuss, to take that accountability. Because I think that also is, and that's not every man's story, because there's a lot of men who are cheating for this no reason. Let's be honest, just they're bastards. But I appreciate the fact you shared that, because that constant rejection is something that some men, not all, so not every man should put themselves in that category, some men are facing in marriage in that respect. And in that instance, is that because there wasn't the emotional connection that was missing, that was not driving the sexual aspect, or was it just he wasn't sexually attracted, or he just wasn't satisfying? I don't want to be rude that way, but
yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, literally quite the opposite. I was very attracted to him. I was raised in a prude way. Sex was not
Mm,
talked about. I didn't have a lot of information. I was very green. To this day, I couldn't have a conversation with my mom about sex. She would be like, "Winter, I don't want to talk about that."
yeah.
So I didn't even have the training, that I needed, or the freedom that I needed to be open and embrace sexuality with my husband. Like, that was not something that was discussed. It was not something that was encouraged. It was not in our marriage classes at church. Like, nothing. It literally took 7 years of just foolishness. And then after finding out I had been cheated on, that didn't help because that shut me down as well. I didn't want to be with them because of what had happened. So we were kind of fighting a losing battle for quite some time. And I'm going to be honest, I shouldn't have stayed. I stayed 8 years longer than I should have. A lot of that had to do with shame. I didn't want to be a divorced woman. I had 4 children. I was still in school, a lot of different reasons, but the embarrassment from, I don't want my kids to come from a divorced home. I don't want people to see me as a divorced woman. But that marriage was on freaking life support. It also altered and changed the way that I parented my kids because I was raised in a very sheltered environment. I talk to my kids about everything. My boys, my girls, we get into the thick of it because you need to know.
No, that's fair. I definitely understand that, and I think that's also very important. I mean, I know how we got here. We got here because obviously we were talking about obviously the replies in terms of the fact that somebody consummating a marriage was very difficult as well in that space as well. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So just for anybody who's listening, tuning in, we are still talking about when did you realize that you married the wrong person. And we're just having some great conversation around that. So if you're just joining us, make sure you're liking, you're sharing, you are subscribing, and participate in the conversation. The chat's very lively, and they're having
Yeah.
their say as well. Some of the other replies that came up that were in this was someone said, "My wedding night, I had a bad feeling as I walked down the aisle, but I thought about it. I thought about it. It was just butterflies. My mom gave me a beautiful Italian lingerie for my wedding night. He told me I was cute and rolled over and went to sleep. I sat on the bathroom floor and sobbed for hours. Crazy work."
This next one is what's crazy. This next one
So,
is insane.
he was this? He ghosted me, or is
No,
that he
he
woke up?
unalived me.
Ah, woke up to him doing CPR. He is removed from our home by the military, and they're supposed to hold him for 48 hours so I could leave. They released him next morning. About 4 years in. Jeez, yeah. To be honest,
How do you
should
unalive somebody?
and still type on threads. I don't know how you do that. I'm not sure. She's typing from the other side. Simon said obviously it hit me during our first look, and then again on the honeymoon. Finally divorced after 6 years. This going back to I think our main part of this conversation was, which I wanted to get to, which was the honeymoon. For a lot of people, when they were replying to you, they were saying that it was the honeymoon that they felt like that's when it fully clicked for them. Why is it that people are experiencing that? And I don't know if you can answer that. Why is it people are experiencing the realization? Because I've heard from a few people as well, same thing. They're having a realization on the honeymoon.
Yeah. Because I believe we were talking a little bit about this. I believe it's like the veil being lifted. You're done with the wedding planning, all of the hoopla surrounding the wedding. Like, it's your first moment of just being with each other. Like, at that moment, you have an opportunity to see what you have chosen. You have an opportunity to have no distraction at that point. It is literally just you and that person. And I think it is the first moment that people are actually sober. I often tell people, like, you should never go to a grocery store when you're hungry
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to pick up all the things that you don't need. Go when you're sober, go when you're full. And I think for the first time, when people get rest, they sleep, they get to the honeymoon, this is a time they can let loose. All inhibitions should be gone. That is the time where you sober up. And at that moment, either it's going to be a good sobering up or it's going to be a bad one. And I think for those of us that know we have married the wrong person, it's a sobering feeling that is like, oh my God, what have I done? This man, I didn't even want to walk through the airport with him. I would walk in front of him. Like, it's just like the sobering. I just knew like this was not going to work. I didn't want it. So I think a lot of people have that on the honeymoon. Not she couldn't squeak out a yes at the proposal.
I mean, some of these replies are wow. This one said, for me, it was the day after we got married. He revealed himself by drinking until he passed out. And when I complained about it, he kicked me out along with a Yorkie and my Maltese dog during a snowstorm. I didn't have the papers, not even a driver license. I'm Brazilian and spent a night cuddled up with the dogs outside my front door. That's just cruel behavior, to be honest. And that's just absolute bastardry. Ali Cat says, obviously, I should have known when I couldn't squeak out a yes at the proposal. The final straw was when the therapist told me she would have had to report to CPS what I told her if we had kids. Damn. Again, someone said I knew the day of. It was his idea and very random. It was almost 8 months pregnant. Woke up one day and when we had kids for the weekend, he's on the phone with a courthouse asking what we need to get married. Just one ring, apparently. I knew it wasn't a good idea. He was only 1 year out from his first divorce. But I thought maybe he will grow up, get sober. It was me, him, 2 kids, his bro, his mum, a courthouse. I called my dad next day, told him, "Sigh, well, I guess if you're happy." And she said, I filed a year later. Our kids were diagnosed with rare genetic disorder that put her in a hospital a lot. He used it to do more drugs, mooched 3/4 of her savings. There was abuse too, before and during, but he never showed up to the divorce. So I got sole custody and parenting time at my discretion because he refuses to do the online parenting class. She's 10 now, and also had her 2 weeks after marriage, a month early, preeclampsia. I can't pronounce that. Preeclampsia?
Oh, preeclampsia.
Preeclampsia, thank you, because my pronunciations. He was supportive during that though.
Oh boy.
So people are having it early. Like people's responses, they're actually having it early. So again, like when I heard his vows, the wedding night, like people are hearing this, they're having gut feelings early.
Yes.
You know, like before we're getting married, which just goes back to what we're saying, you know, or even like after.
Yep. It's almost immediate because and I'm going to be honest, for those people that are, let's be clear, in my situation, he was not honest about who he was and the things that he had going on. So for people like him and many others, I will also say too, I think why the honeymoon is such an eye-opening experience or shortly thereafter is because also the people who are being fake or phony about who they are, once they feel like they've gotten you to say I do, they also start to remove their mask because they feel like, well, and somebody actually said that her husband told her after the wedding, she's stuck now. And I'm telling you, for those that wear masks like mine, he literally said to me, "You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to let you divorce me that easily." I was like, this joker is crazy. It's absolutely out of his mind. Now, that wasn't the first time that I'd seen him be crazy in the only year that we were married. But when he said that to me, I'm like, you absolutely did this to try to trap me. And I think a lot of people in this section indicated having that experience as well. So a lot of that eye-opening experience is also too because people drop those masks. Like, oh, we in it now. I can just be myself. I ain't got to keep up, put on airs. This guy being 19 years older. Now, guys, let's be mindful. At the time, I was 38. So I'm not a young woman dating an older guy. I'm a mature woman dating an older guy. So he was 19 years older. The entire time during our courtship, he was spiffy. Like, he dressed younger. His hair wasn't grayed yet. He had a few gray hairs here and there. Really, really nice hair, actually. He wasn't bald or anything. He was a little quirky, but, put together man. I'm like, okay. I had no idea he was even 19 years older. I actually would have put him around the 50 mark, which still would have been perfectly fine. 12 years is not that big of a gap. When he finally told me, I was blown. All that to say, I would have put him as a person that was kind of stylish for his age. So I was like, okay, he don't look his age. Even my friends were like, he doesn't seem like he's, his age at all. Child, as soon as we said I do, he literally started wearing them Bahama Mama old retirement shirts. He started wearing his glasses on the tip of his nose. He would plop his old man hat. I was like, what in the world? He didn't have to try anymore. He wasn't an older man trying to get a young woman's attention anymore. I had said I do. So all the things that I feel like he had tucked away and not done, while we were dating, he didn't care anymore. He was going to be his full-blown 57-year-old self, and it irritated my soul. I was like, wait a minute. Who are you? What is this? It was just wild to me. So I will say that there's some of that, not the broccoli draws. I do feel like he was trying to impress me, honestly. And I think there's a lot of that with some of these people. So I think sometimes the mask just falls off shortly after you say I do. But another round, I see your comment. Yeah, a lot of these people are speaking out, but they're still suffering in silence. And that's I think that's why it's important to talk about these things, to give people a place, a safe space, or an outlet to share, because a lot of people do suffer in silence. I know I personally was so embarrassed. It took me a while to open up and start really sharing with my friends and family that this was not a good situation for me. And in fact, it started to become an unsafe situation because of some of his behavior. So I think that's the unfortunate thing. But we're going to continue to see more of this. I hate to say that, Kojo, but for as much as we talk about this in hopes to educate and trigger people to choose better and do better, people are still going to go down this road, and you're still going to see these things happen, unfortunately.
So rounding off the conversation, what would be your advice to someone who is getting that feeling? They're getting a nagging feeling. They're getting something's not quite right. They can't put the finger on it quite, but something isn't quite right. What would be your advice to that person if you were to say anything to them?
Lean into it. Lean into it. I think so often we want to run away from those feelings, especially for those of us that are getting married for the first time. I think if you're getting married for a second time, you need to be even more cautious. But I think getting married for the first time, it's easier to overlook these feelings because you're so excited to be married. A lot of people get more excited about being married than they do about the actual marriage. And you're not marrying just for one day. The goal and the hope is to marry for a lifetime. So pay attention, lean into it. If you have a nagging feeling that you literally just can't explain, it may seem contradictory to the normal life that you live day to day, as in the person seems like a good person. It seems like things are on the right track. It seems like you guys are aligned. It's even helpful to pad maybe the timeline that you guys have said and say, hey, let's take a little more time. There's no rush. I love Pastor R.C. Blake's one of the greatest pieces of love advice I think he has ever given. He states that love was never meant to be rushed. And I think that's an underrated quote. Love was never meant to be rushed. I also think it's important that as believers, if you are a believer, we stop pushing this narrative that God is going to choose our spouse. God doesn't choose for us. We are always going to be responsible for every choice that we make. If we're not, then he's not God. And God always gives us free will because it's the foundation of grace, the ability to choose him, the ability to choose to serve him and obey him. So just like our relationship with Christ is a choice, the person who we choose to spend our life with is a choice. You've even seen the twisting of scripture where it says, if a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. And people are trying to manipulate that scripture and say, well, no, you have to find the person that God has for you. Well, that's a misinterpretation of scripture. It never says that. It says when he finds a wife. That means when you choose a wife, God at that point honors that marriage. Doesn't matter who you choose, is your choice. All that to say, your choice is your choice. Doesn't mean it's the right choice necessarily, but it's still your choice. And God is going to honor that choice. So I would say just be more mindful in who you choose. Ask God to grant you the wisdom to see people beyond what you see. My mentor always says, God, give us the eyes to hear and the ears to see. And a lot of people say, no, that's backwards intentionally. Because oftentimes, if we pay attention and we see, what we see communicates to us loud and very clear. And so she says, give us eyes to hear. So when you watch, make sure you're paying attention to what a person is and isn't communicating verbally and non-verbally. Pay attention. Nonverbal communication counts for a lot. I think back to some of the instances where I've dated people I had no business dating. And I think about some of their body language and some of their eye, move. I mean, I can remember looking at one guy and a part of me was like, oh, he's crazy. And against my better judgment, I still, dated him. But when I tell you everything I thought that I picked up was exactly what it was, and he was absolutely out of his mind. And thankfully, he never hurt me, but he was a loose cannon. And so now I don't miss a thing. My guy will tell you. I know him. He'll tell you. I know him almost as good as he knows himself because I pay attention. I look, I listen. I am quick to hush and be quiet. Some women, ladies, I know we're talkers and we're chatty patties sometimes. I'm telling you, it pays to be quiet and just listen, because oftentimes a lot of the questions that we have, we'll get the answers to if we're quiet long enough and we actually hear. So I'm just big on really slowing down and taking your time. I believe that, my mom says, she makes a statement, there's a lid for every pot. And I believe that there could be a lid for every pot. But you want to make sure you're choosing the right lid for your pot. And the only way you can do that is to enact the wisdom that God gives us, and the common sense that God gives us. I tell people all the time, your Holy Spirit was never meant to be a replacement for your common sense. They are meant to work in tandem. The Holy Spirit should enhance your common sense, not void you of it. And a lot of times, as believers, we use the Holy Spirit as an excuse to make dumb decisions. No, use your common sense. He gave us a brain. He gave us all of our nerves that trigger signals for a reason. Utilize them to your advantage. I pray that my third time is a charm and it's my last time, because let me tell you what, if it ain't, and I believe with everything that it will be, baby, it's me and Jesus. We ain't gonna try it again no more. But I'm not going to say I do until I'm sure. And we have gone through the necessary things that we need to go through to make sure we're sure. But yes, SJ, I agree with that too. Don't over spiritualize everything either. I believe in God. He is my source and my foundation. I am as Bible believing as they come. But when I tell you God has had to, like, literally, I almost feel like it's a I don't know, like what do you call it? Like a D something, when you just need to be stripped from all the things that have clouded.
Deconstruction.
Yes, deconstructed my thinking, my mindset, and how I show up in this world. Because unfortunately, religion has done a number on a number of us, and it's not to our service. It's been to our disservice. So my encouragement is that if you are looking to get married, take your time. If you have been married before and you're looking to get married again, take your time, and make sure that you have resolved whatever you needed to resolve from the previous marriage. Because I think so often we think we're ready because we feel like we weren't at fault. And just because you weren't at fault doesn't mean that you still don't have wounds that need to be healed. And that's what I learned. I used a future marriage to kind of fill in the gap when that gap just needed to be clear, just needed to be healed and closed on my own. I didn't need to be another wife to be as fabulous as God made me to be. And it took me going through this situation to learn that. So I'm not pressed to be a wife. I am a wife. I operate in the spirit of a wife. And should a man choose to make me his good thing, I will be amazing at it. But I ain't pressed. And I ain't stressed about it. And it'll happen in God's time. That's how I feel.
I love that as well. And I just want to say to anybody who's in a position where they are, they're starting to feel that nagging feeling, or they feel like the Holy Spirit's tugging at them, or anything like that as well, is like, I love what you said as well. It's about just slowing down and actually honoring your feelings. If you're somebody who actually honors their feelings, this wouldn't have been a prolonged feelings that you're having for a long time. But a lot of times, because many of us don't actually honor our own feelings, those difficult feelings that we don't want to actually dive into and be inquisitive about. So if you are having that nagging feeling, I would say just kind of slow it down and honor the feelings and explore down the rabbit hole of those feelings. Where's it coming from? Why am I feeling it? Because our emotions are simply messages. So there's something that's trying to tell you something. In that space. And also check your heart to see if marriage has become an idol over your actual happiness, because you being unhappy is not the way to go forth in this marriage. You know what I mean? Like you just started, you shouldn't be unhappy. You know what I mean? So don't pedestalize marriage above the relationship itself that you're looking at and going, actually, is this really for me? Am I betraying myself by going forward in this relationship and I'm not honoring what I actually feel as well? And number 3, I would say as well, look, choose wise counsel around you to have some real conversations, because some people may be able to help you have a better perspective on this. Choose wisely, because some people will throw you back into that thing and tell you just ignore. If someone gives you advice to ignore how you feel, they are not a good advisor. I'm just going to put it straight. Anybody telling you just get over it, anybody telling you that is not being a wise advisor. And a wise advisor will tell you, start exploring these feelings and what you're actually feeling. You know what I'm saying? To explore those feelings by self-examining your actual self, which means to sit down with yourself and really just discover why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Pray about it, of course, as well. So prayer and action also go hand in hand. So, just for anybody out there, also pray about it, fast, take your time with it, and just kind of explore those things. The reason why people get confused, though, is normally because, again, the emotional investment, but also because the biggest issue usually is that you don't actually honor you. And that's what conflicting the issue with choosing this path. It makes you go, I'm not really sure. So if that is the case for a lot of you, just slow down, honor yourself, explore yourself, and see where it takes you. And if it takes you back to that relationship and you feel more, you should be, by the end of it, you should be able to say that I'm confident in my decision. If you're not confident and you know deep down that you can hear a nagging sound, you are not confident about your decision. You're going to regret it, So, yeah.
Let me tell you one thing that I changed, and this was a pattern I noticed in myself. I noticed that I was so quick to seek advice and counsel from my friends and people I felt close to. But a lot of times our friends don't give good advice because they're only getting one-sided information. It's not that they can't give good advice, but if they don't have access to the other side, it's very difficult oftentimes to give well-rounded advice. And so a lot of times our friends are not great advice givers because they don't have the information that they would need to give good advice. I also found that I used my friends as a crutch. And oftentimes I used it to validate or invalidate whatever I was sensing or feeling. One of the things that God had to teach me over the last few years was to learn to trust his voice and to trust what he had given me and the wisdom he had given me. And I didn't have that prior. I would always run to my friends. So one of the things I challenged myself to do in the last few relationships that I've had is not to go to my friends so much and to trust myself. And when I tell you it has made a world of difference, I have dated 3 people since that divorce 4 years ago. Okay. Or that relationship ended 4 years ago. Dated 3 people. When I tell you the first 2 people, they didn't last more than 3 months because I trusted myself. I didn't need my friends to, girl, you think I should end it? You think I should move on? I just knew it's not a good fit. It's time to move on. And people will tell you with this relationship I've been in 2 years, people just assume, because my friends are like, you never say anything anymore. I'm like, I don't need to say anything. I don't need to get advice for things that we both openly go to therapy. If we need to go to couples therapy, we know how to do that. But I know how to trust myself now. So I don't need to go to my friends for everything to validate or invalidate something I may or may not be feeling. And it has been a huge sense of relief. And it's been a huge source of healing. So I would say be very mindful that be mindful of who you get counsel from is a real thing. Even your friends with the best of intentions are not always the people that you should get advice from, just because they don't have both sides. It's very difficult to be unbiased when you don't have the information that you need. Not to say that there aren't gifted people in our lives, and maybe they've proven themselves, but even still, I'm telling you, Kojo, if I had went to some people that I know are Bible believing, praying, fasting, Holy Ghost spitting, okay, they would have told me to stick it out. I know they would have. They would have told me to fight for my marriage. And this was not to be fought for. This was to never have started in the first place. So
that's fair. That's very, very fair. I think a lot of people give advice in that particular way. Not everyone's graced to give advice. That's the problem. You know what I mean? Some people are just not meant to give advice in that particular space. You know, and again, you know, I think it always comes back down to, like you said, trusting your voice.
yes.
And oftentimes I'm just meant to be a soundboard, right? So if you ask me my advice is whatever I would actually just replay what you just told me. And that's what a good advisor would do. They replay what you've said already to you and say, how does that sound to you, so that you can actually make that decision going forward. Because we need to empower, because the whole point is that I'm meant to empower you. I'm not taking away your decision by giving you a decision. I'm trying to help you be empowered so you can make the decision, because I'm not going to be in a relationship to be able I'm not fully adequate to be able to judge, because I don't spend all the day with you and them. Right. So I won't ever know. So only you know. So which is why advice should be centered around feeding the power back to the person who's asking for the advice, so that they're empowered to make a good decision as well. So that's how you know someone's going to give you good advice.
Yeah, that's what makes a great therapist too, because that's the principles that they're taught and trained under. Like, a therapist should never tell you what to do. They help guide you on deciding what you should do, but they should never tell you. So yeah, I completely agree. But this has been a great conversation. I could talk about this forever, because I have lived this. I have lived it. And if I can save people from going through what I experienced, that's my goal. I'm telling you, like, if I can just save one person from walking down an aisle and avoiding a divorce, that would be my greatest, like, accomplishment out of everything that I've been through. I often tell people I don't hold my first marriage in that regard, because we made this decision as two young kids. And honestly, you know, the fact that we got 15 years is pretty impressive, considering we didn't know each other and we definitely didn't know anything about being married. So I think, unfortunately, in some of those circumstances, you're going to kind of get the outcome. The infidelity is definitely unfortunate, but I do tell people we both came from very similar backgrounds and family structures. So I believe if it wasn't for the infidelity, we would have still been married, because we just believed in family and marriage. His parents are still married to this day. My parents were married for 27 years. So I believe we still would have been married, miserable, albeit, because we are just two totally different people. And I think that's why we have been able to move on and co-parent so well. Like, we're cool. We don't have any issues. He's remarried now. My kids love his wife. Like, it's cool. We don't have any issues. He's met my guy. We're good. But it's a little bit different. I feel like if we both had to go back and do it all over again, we wouldn't have moved forward. We just would have not got married so young. But the second situation definitely just should never have happened. So if I can save people from making those horrible mistakes like I did, that's my goal. And that's why I share so openly and transparently.
Well, thank you very much, Winter. We'll definitely have you back on here again to discuss further. There's other topics. I'm sure you
Happy
probably end up going viral. Nah, man, come on, it's a blessing, man. It's always a vibe when we have you on here, and the conversation is always vibrant, and you keep it 100% real as well. So I know there was many more topics we could have dived into, and so we'll definitely explore that for our next conversation as well. We said that 2 years ago. We need to follow up.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to. You know what I mean? Because it's good. So, but for the audience who's been with us, thank you so much. You know, and we'll definitely have Winter back on here again to discuss more stuff. And if there is any particular topics you guys want us to discuss, by all means, shout Winter.
Oh my gosh! Before I forget, you follow Married at First Sight, right?
Yeah.
I have to ask you before I get off because I'm like late to getting caught up. Please tell me you know that Akechi is full of crap. Am I wrong?
Oh no, yeah, no, he is.
Okay.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Okay, I
he's
haven't
full of
gotten
crap.
as far as you probably are because I'm like episodes behind everyone else, but
What episode are you on?
Kind of I'm on episode 13 or 14, I think. They're getting ready. Hold on, they're getting ready to move into their apartments. And he's
wait.
saying that he doesn't.
They're moving in. Okay, yeah.
Yes, that's where I am. But he gives me weird vibes. And I'm like,
I guess worse.
I knew it. I can't.
You need to join the first day panels.
Oh, I have so many thoughts. Right now, I'm going to tell you. He is on my watch list because I feel like he is there to publicize his book. That's what I think he's there for. He reminds me of the situation I went through second season of Love and Marriage DC. I had one of those. And it's just some ways that he's moving and some comments. I'm telling you, I feel like I'm seeing what I went through live and in action and some things though that woke conversation, I can't stand it. It usually equals narcissist. So I'm a withhold my judgment until things start to unfold. But that's what I peep with him. I feel bad for M because I feel like she's really thirsty for marriage. And I'm gonna need her to slow her roll so she can kind of see that he don't like her like that. That's what I'm getting. Like he don't like her like that. Michelle is on my last nerve. She should have actually just went home after they got married and she found out she didn't like him. So I feel like she's going to irk me. I'm trying to think of their names. I have hope for the biracial couple. I have hope
Thomas
for
and
them.
Camille.
Yes, Thomas and Camille. I love them and I want Camille to get out of her own head about him. I feel like he's a great catch. The Hispanic couple, I can't think of his name.
Juan and Carla.
Yes. Carla crazy. And I think
this. So thank you for saying that.
Oh, Carla crazy. I honestly, literally, when they were doing her like introduction for the show, she is crazy as a $3 bill. And I don't care what nobody says. That's my story. And I'm sticking to it. That girl is not right in the head. And then when she started talking about all her spiritual practices, she dealing with too much. I'm telling you now, that girl is not right. And I feel like she's an undercover gold digger. It's just some conversations that her and Juan are starting to have that I'm like, she's fishing to see how much money he got. Because this girl is giving freeloader. That's what I'm thinking. Juan is more traditional. So, baby, he's about that 50-50 life. And when his parents had said that, I was like, oh, this about to go down. What's the other couple? The last couple, I'm trying to think.
Alan and Madison.
Madison, yes. Oh, he gonna get his heart broken. I feel so bad for him because he is truly in this for the he's in this for the experience. But Madison don't like him like that. And I don't know why she is so turned off. When she met up with David, though, I felt like they had more chemistry. So I'm like, child, maybe they just got the people wrong. Maybe Madison should have got with David because, baby, Michelle don't want no David. But him still living in his parents' basement is diabolical. And I understand saving money, but that could be a bit of a turnoff for some women. I've been there, done that, and I was not happy. But this is an interesting season. I'm telling you now, like, I feel like the last 3 seasons of Married at First Sight, these people been playing in my face. And I'm so tired of them trying to come on here and just get some clout. But I honestly feel like this season, I'm not sure if they're going to have any couples that stand. I'm not seeing it right now. Everybody's on the struggle bus right now. That's my thoughts.
I'm not going to say much. I want you to watch it.
Okay. Oh God.
Then join us on Thursday. I think you're pretty close. I'm just saying that you need to watch it because there's a few more turnsy. So you just need to watch it. You need to watch it.
Is Michelle gonna go home? I'm so sick of her because I just feel like she's being mean to him. Like, I get it. You don't like that he lives in his parents' basement, but I just think she's nasty. Like, she's giving Karen, and I don't like it.
I mean, listen, I don't want to spoil it for you. Just know that
dang
things are gonna.
Okay. What did I want this whole conversation and it made me mad? I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to make you mad at the end.
You're gonna find out.
I'm telling you my thoughts. You don't think, Sean? Now I know you gotta know Carla's crazy.
No. Sean is in the Carla camp. He is defending her for his last. Sean will defend her last time, bro.
She is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That lady is crazy.
He said no. He gonna defend her to the kingdom come.
I think Juan is an avoidant. He avoids. I don't like the way he handles conflict right now. That's the biggest issue I see with him. And he likes to kind of skirt over and brush over. So I'm like, okay, you're a conflict avoidant type person. But Carla is crazy. I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry. Sorry, friend. I think she's a nut.
Allison says Sia is a nut train too. I said
she is crazy.
I'm saying this is good. Hey, listen, we debated this on Thursday nights. There's 2 camps. One that believes that Carla is cool. The other side believes that Carla is crazy. So, it's quite interesting.
She has a cool personality. Like, she's very free spirited, but she cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That girl not right. I'm telling you something.
I'm with you.
I'm with you. I'm gonna tell you what, she gives me the sweet and spicy. If you piss her off, don't sleep next to her. You better keep your eyes open. She give me that type of vibe. Like, has a split second of crazy. And I'm telling you, I would not feel safe in a house, especially if I know she feels some type of way, because she is passive aggressive. And when she's mad, she's aggressive. So she ain't the type of person that's gonna let something slide. If she feels offended, she gonna get you back. You gotta sleep with one eye open with them type people.
I'm telling you, come on a Thursday night and come and share your thoughts. And that's what I'm gonna say to you, because you need to be in the midst of the heat of the battle with the conversation. There's 2 sides to it right now. People are feeling it. You're gonna find out. Yeah. So if you turn from Thursday, let us know. We'll bring you in because the conversation is fierce right now. So,
okay. I got to get caught up though. I'm still behind. I really think I feel like I'm on episode 13 or 14. And I don't know what episode everyone else is on.
Everyone's on the latest one, but I think they numbered a good way because technically we're on episode 12, right? Because that's what it is. That's the latest episode. So I just want to eat you up as the latest episode. But episode 13 is going to be out tomorrow. Obviously for us, is that tonight? They have the episode tonight. So there's some stuff that's going to happen. So that's what I'm saying to you. Thursday night, I'm not going to say anything. You have to watch it. Thursday night.
All right. I'm ready. I should do live reactions because I got a lot to say. I'm telling you.
We're definitely going to go. And there's a lot of shows coming up. So we've got Ready to Love coming up. We've got Family and Fiance coming up. We've got Love is Blind coming up all in February. So February's going to be a very busy month. So
Oh,
a
it's
lot
a
to
great month
discuss.
though for that stuff. It's a love month. Why not?
It is a love month. It is a love month.
I'm
You know what I'm
with it.
saying to you?
All right, you ladies and
All right.
gents.
Audience, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. All right. We're going to see you again Thursday night for Married at First Sight as well. I am watching Married at First Sight Australia as well, but I'm going to do weekly reviews. I can't do every day. I'm tired. But I am watching it as well. So those of you who are watching Married at First Sight Australia, will be at the end of the week. I'll do a review for you guys as well. Wags, I heard, is a bit crazy as well. So we'll I'll try and watch that and see how it goes. But
Right.
listen, audience, much love, much appreciation. We will see you again very, very soon. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. We'll see you again later. Little Black Book. You know what time it is.